Well, I was right. They were not able to top the previous episode, even with the 2 week hiatus that they had. Don't really see the point of the 2 week hiatus, but hey, I I have no creative control over this show, so I guess I can let it slide. I guess I'll just have to trust that that 2 week hiatus was necessary. But this episode was just good. It was it was good. There was nothing really special about it, aside from a lot of the name dropping. And it did boast a few interesting changes of pace, but overall, it's nowhere near as strong as the previous episode. The plot is there's actually two plots going on because you have what is supposed to be the main story, which is Oliver becoming very paranoid and frightened about Slade Wilson coming back seemingly from the dead, and him honestly being at a loss of what to do because he wants to resolve it really quickly and he's afraid that Slade will hurt those around him. So that honestly kind of feels like an afterthought in the grand scheme of things. The second plot that goes on in this episode is actually very centered around the character of John Diggle, the Arrow's bodyguard. And Diggle is recruited by Amanda Waller to partake in a secret mission where he joins the Suicide Squad. Now I am by no means well versed in this particular group of characters in regards to the comics, so I could not really say if the Suicide Squad that we see in this episode is true to the one seen in the comics. But Diggle is recruited to join the Suicide Squad to infiltrate this party, which is hosted by a terrorist turned U.S. ally. And according to Waller's info, this terrorist in his basement has a chemical weapon. So their number one priority is to locate the chemical weapon and seemingly extract it. But complications arise, twists unfold, and things do not go according to plan. But basically that is the main plot of this episode. What's supposed to be the main plot is the Oliver portion, but really the primary focus is given to Diggle and his exploits because the Suicide Squad is pretty personal to him because his ex-wife is on it, Lila, who was also a former fellow army member. So that she's on there. Deadshot is on there, and Deadshot, if you remember, killed Diggle's brother. So those are the two big personal members, and there's also Bronze Tiger and some guy named Shrapnel. Bronze Tiger played again by Michael J. White. So on the whole, and I don't know who plays Amanda Waller, but honestly, Amanda Waller should have been played by CCH Pounder, who actually voiced her in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon series. Because CCH Pounder, she's definitely got the acting chops for Amanda Waller, and seeing how she did such a good job voicing her, I would have liked to see what she did with an actual screen role, especially since the woman that they got to play Amanda Waller doesn't really have a very authoritative presence. Honestly, there are a lot of other females on this show with more presence and more authority to them than the woman they got to play Amanda Waller. So another benefit to adding CCH Pounder to the cast is that she would have had more screen presence than this chick. But that actually brings me to the acting. The acting is fairly solid. Not quite as good as last time, And there are some characters that are omitted, such as Moira Queen. I think she only gets like one line on the TV. Thea is not here. Roy is not here. But the characters that we do get are Oliver, Sarah, Laurel, Diggle, and the members of the Suicide Squad, and Felicity. Those are the players that we get in this episode, and they all give pretty good performances. So I can't really complain about the acting, and the two different stories that this episode tries to balance. They're written fairly well. They're written and told very well. I can't really complain about the individual pacing of these stories, but the problem is, especially coming off of such a well balanced and well put together episode last time, to all of a sudden shove the whole Deathstroke thing into the background, where it serves as little more than a subplot, and have the main focus be on Diggle. And again, not that Diggle is an uninteresting character, it's just that it seems like padding to include the Suicide Squad as the main focus of this episode and not really focus on Deathstroke all that much. What we do get is Oliver's paranoia, and again, that's handled well. These two individual stories were not handled well, but they are completely unrelated. They do not do anything to tie them in together. The whole episode, I was waiting for Oliver to say, "Hey, where's Diggle?" So yeah, I think the writers could have, if they had to put these two storylines together in one episode, I definitely think they should have done a little bit more to tie them together instead of essentially feeling like two separate TV shows, two separate episodes. But again, individually they are not told badly. It's just a little jarring to see the episode constantly cut back and forth between the two, because again they have nothing to do with each other. And that's really the biggest flaw in this episode. It seems unsure of what it wants to be. Does it want to be a very psychological episode where Oliver just kind of breaks down in fear, or does it want to be a Diggle-centric episode where he comes to terms with certain figures of his past? And what we get is divided time. And with the time that is given to these two individual subplots, I'm sounding like a broken record here, they do handle these plots well with the time given to them, but I can't help feeling that each of these plots should have gotten their own episode. But maybe they were on a time crunch, maybe they thought, we only have a certain number of episodes we can have before the season ends, and we really want to get these two plot lines in there. So just squash them into one episode and downplay them. I have no idea if that's the real story, but artistically the episode suffers for it. But like I said, the episode is still very good. The acting is still very good. There's not really a whole lot of fights, and the fights that are here are handled pretty well. Like I said, for an episode this divided between two plots, both of them are well paced and they're well told. The writing is very good on both ends. So I've already tackled the biggest problem, is that these two plot lines should have each had their own episode, and they don't. And honestly, that was a real distraction. But a few other minor pet peeves, or not really pet peeves, just little problems that kind of irked me throughout the episode. One is, I don't think they quite capture the character of Amanda Waller. I kind of touched on this earlier by casting CCH Pounder, and I'm not just talking about the casting, because honestly, there wasn't really a whole lot wrong with this woman's performance. If I don't know her name, I'm sorry, but there wasn't really a whole lot wrong with this woman's performance. that a good script could not remedy. And would I have preferred CCH Pounder? Would I have thought that she would have been a better choice? Oh yeah. But again, this woman did her very best. So I can't really blame her entirely for her lackluster performance. And this actually goes to what I was saying about them not really getting the character of Amanda Waller, because Amanda Waller, especially in Justice League, she was willing to cross a lot of ethical lines. But I don't really think that she would resort to what eventually is revealed to be her plan in this episode. I don't think that's it just seems very cold-hearted to me for this character. Because Amanda Waller, I've always felt that her top priority is to save lives, and everything that she has done has been with the goal of saving lives. And I suppose you could argue that what she eventually tries to do in this episode is for the greater good, because the chemical weapon is out of the way. But for her to endanger that many people who are completely uninvolved with this chemical weapon, I just felt was very out of character. It was needlessly cruel, and yeah, that really kind of bugged me right up until the end. So hopefully they can better establish the character of Amanda Waller. Hopefully they can come up with some sort of justification for this. Maybe it was more personal than this episode let on. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But another thing that really bugged me, and really kind of got on my nerves throughout the Oliver subplot. I say Oliver's subplot. He's the main character, and he's in a subplot. But another thing that kind of bothered me with him is that he resorts to the... I hate it when movies do this, where he says to Sarah, Slade's gonna hurt you to come after me. I'd stay away from me. I don't want to put you in danger because I'm endangering you when we're close together. And I am just kind of... I'm just going like that. Where it's resorting to that tired old cliche where I'm going to protect you by basically not being with you and not being in close proximity to you. That is a stupid cliche. It needs to die. I've had enough of it, and it makes no sense. Because if anything, pushing Sarah away is more hazardous to her health than if she was close to you. Because pushing her away basically isolates her and makes her more vulnerable to an attack. So wouldn't having her in close proximity to you make there's strength in numbers, and two professional assassins like them, I think they could fend off a lot of threats that would come their way, especially if they were together. So this whole I don't want to endanger you by being with you thing seemed really contrived, and I was glad when they kind of moved past it. I'm glad they didn't dwell on it, and that was one of the major issues. I said that neither of these storylines were well written, but that was a glaring problem that should not have come up in the first place. And one more minor thing I will say, just kind of a nitpick, I guess in the grand scheme of things it qualifies as a nitpick. Harley Quinn cameos in this episode. Harley Quinn, for those who don't know, Harley Quinn is the very, very codependent girlfriend of the Joker, who is probably the best known villain of Batman in existence. And she doesn't actually appear on screen. She appears, it's the scene where Diggle is being introduced to the members of the Suicide Squad, and they've come out of these holding cells, and all of the holding cells except one open, and and basically you're kind of left in the dark as to who this is, and then Diggle and his ex-wife start arguing, and all of a sudden you hear this very shrill, girly taunt, like do you guys need counseling? Because I'm a therapist, or I'm a licensed therapist, or something like that. And ordinarily I would just kind of write that off as being just another inmate, but the way that she said it, and the very taunting nature of that line of dialogue, and the silhouette, because you don't see her, she's silhouetted in the cell. Her hair's all messed up. It looks blonde from what little I caught, and I'm pretty sure that her voice was dubbed over by Tara Strong, who, again, I can't prove that. I may have to go back and look at the end credits, but it sounded remarkably similar to Tara Strong, who, for any hardcore fanboys out there, Tara Strong has voiced Harley Quinn for a few years now. I mean, she hasn't always been the voice of Harley Quinn. She took over the role fairly recently. I think starting in Arkham City, Batman Arkham City, she took over the role of Harley Quinn. And like I said, the line of dialogue here sounds eerily similar, both in terms of the dialogue itself and how it is read. So it's Harley Quinn, right down to her being a therapist, because Harley Quinn was the Joker's therapist. And the reason I had a problem with this is because A, it's entirely pointless. It contributes nothing, and it's only there to say, hey, it's Harley Quinn, maybe. But secondly, this opens up a whole new realm of uncertainty, because we've already established that the show Arrow, by introducing Barry Allen earlier in the season, we've established that Arrow takes place possibly in a much larger universe of TV superheroes by DC. So doesn't this wouldn't this lead you to the conclusion that Batman is somewhere in this universe? So are they insinuating that there's going to be a Batman show? I don't know, but it was very distracting, and like I said, it was pointless. But that minor gripe aside, this was a fairly solid episode, and the flaws were kind of disappointing. The major flaws, especially coming on the heels of the nearly perfect episode last time. But next episode seems to have a stronger narrative. It seems to have a more focused storyline. It doesn't really seem like it's going to divide its time as blatantly as this one did. And honestly, this episode could have turned out a lot worse. In dividing time between these two storylines, they could have easily turned out a lot worse than they did. So kudos. I will give a semi-kudos to the writers for working with what they had and making the best of it. They really did try to make lemonade out of lemons, but they shouldn't have cut the lemon in half. I don't even know if that makes sense, but yeah, until tomorrow night, actually, when Vikings comes on. So I will talk to you later.